Hi, third graders. Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk more about fractions as part of a whole. We've already learned that a fraction is a number that names equal parts of a whole. We learned what a unit fraction is. A unit fraction has a 1 as the numerator. It names one part of the whole. And we learned how we can use models to represent unit fractions. These are our objectives today. This is what third graders need to be able to do. Third graders need to be able to represent fractions using fraction circles and bars. Third graders need to be able to read, write, and identify fractions of a whole. Third graders need to be able to show fractions as points or distances on a number line. That's new today. And third graders need to be able to express whole numbers as fractions. That's new today too. We're going to practice all 4 of these objectives. Think about this. One whole can be divided into many equal parts. How can you write one whole as a fraction in 3 different ways? I'm hoping that when we're done, you'll be able to answer this question, so we'll revisit it. First things first. You can use models to show fractions as part of a whole. Maria divides a rectangle into 4 equal parts. Here's Maria's rectangle. You can see that 3 out of 4 parts are orange. 1, 2, 3. So we can say 3/4 of the rectangle is orange. 3/4 is how you read this fraction. How'd I get 3/4? 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 means 3 orange parts altogether. That's 3/4. Now one of these parts is white. 1 out of 4 is white. We write the fraction like this. 1/4 of the rectangle is white, and we say the words 1/4. You can also say 1/4 for 1/4. So now we've got 3/4 that are orange and 1/4 together make one whole. The fraction name for one whole, boys and girls, according to this model, is 4/4. One whole thing. So this is one way you can represent parts of a whole using a fraction model. Another way is to write down the parts as an addition sentence and what they equal to. Here's the third way. You can show fractions on a number line. Now, this is a model, a rectangle model here, that shows thirds. 1/3 and another third are yellow, and 1/3 is white. Right underneath the model to show you a different way to represent fractions in equal parts is a number line. It starts at 0 and it ends at 1 because it represents one whole, just like this rectangle does. It's one whole rectangle. This is one whole on a number line. The number line is divided into 3 equal parts. This is a part, 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts. Just like the rectangle model is divided into 3 equal parts, the number line is too. We call each part 1/3. So from 0 to the first part, that's 1 part out of 3. The fraction that names this tick mark is 1/3. This is the second part out of 3. So the fraction that names this tick mark is 2/3. Now, boys and girls, this is one whole, but what's the fraction name for one whole on this number line? If this is 1/3, this is 2/3, the fraction name for one whole on this number line is, if you said 3/3, you are right. That's another way you can represent a whole with a fraction. I'd like to try some more practice with number lines and representing fractions on a number line. I'm going to share my document camera now, and you can see I have a copy of the same slide you were just looking at. Let's practice writing fractions on a number line. Now, I'd like all of these number lines to stand for one whole, so I'm going to make them start at 0 and end at 1. This represents one whole. This number line I'd like to divide into 4 equal parts. Let's count the parts that this number line is divided into. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thumbs up if you agree that I divided this number line into 4 equal parts. Okay, now let's label each part of the number line. From 0 to the first tick mark is the first part. That tick mark should be 1/4 of the number line. The second tick mark represents the second part. 2/4 is what the tick mark should be labeled with. This tick mark here, this is 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts. This is 3 out of 4 parts, so this is 3/4. And here's the 1, the fraction name for 1 on this number line. If you said 4/4, you're correct. Boys and girls, when the numerator and the denominator is the same, 4/4, it means 1 whole, because we now know that this is the number of parts and the total number of parts. So 4/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4 gives us 1 whole. Let's do it again, except this time, let's divide the number line into eighths. Again, I want this number line to represent 1 whole. So this is 0 and this is 1 whole. Remember, fractions name a number that is part of a whole. So let's just double check and make sure. Did I divide the number lines into 8 equal parts? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I want you to make a noticing. I did not count the lines. I didn't count the lines. And the reason I'm not counting the lines is because I'm counting the number of equal parts. This is the first part, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now let's go ahead and label the fractions that belong on this number line. This is the first part out of 8. So this tick mark is 1/8 of a whole. This is the second, so we have 2/8 of a whole. The third, 3/8 of a whole. The fourth is 4/8 of a whole. The fifth is 5/8 of a whole. 6/8 of a whole. 7/8 of a whole, and 1 whole. But the fraction name for 1 whole in this number line is 8/8. So boys and girls, that's what you need to know to label fractions on a number line. The biggest mistake third graders make is deciding what the denominator should be by counting the number of lines. So boys and girls, we already agreed that I divided this number line into 8 equal parts. Watch how I can easily make a mistake if I count the tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's how many tick marks there are on the number line, but that's not how many parts this number line is divided into. Remember, this number line represents 1 whole, and I divided it into 8 equal parts. Let's go back now to our presentation and talk about how you can also show fractions greater or bigger than 1 whole on a number line. Check this out. Make a noticing here. This number line starts at 0 and it ends at 2. But let's go ahead and see what each whole is divided into. If you notice, from 0 to 1, 1 equal part, 2 equal parts, 3 equal parts, 4. So there are 2 wholes, boys and girls, on this number line. But each of those wholes is divided into 4 equal parts. That's why there's a 4 as the denominator. So check this out. This is 1/4, then 2/4, then 3/4, then 1 or 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and then what's the fraction name for 2 on this number line? If you said 8/4, you are right. I will talk more about this in the next video we'd like you to watch. We want you to watch both videos today, boys and girls, so you'll be prepared for your lesson with your teacher in small groups. 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, 5/4. But 2 wholes is 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4. By the way, I'm going to give you a hint here. Just like I told you, when the numerator and denominator is the same, it stands for 1 whole. If you can divide the numerator by the denominator, it will give you the number of wholes. So 8 divided by 4 is 2 wholes. 8/4 is 2 wholes. Let's talk about this again. The whole is divided into one part. You can write 1 whole as 1/1. This tells kids when the denominator is 1, you say whole. So this is 1 whole. Because, just like always, the denominator tells us how many equal parts a whole is divided into. Well, this whole isn't divided. It's 1 whole piece. We say 1 whole. Let's see what it looks like for 2. When you see a fraction, the fraction name for 2 wholes looks like this. You say 2 wholes. It means 2 whole pies. When 1 is the denominator, that stands for wholes. This is the way you can write a whole number, the number 2, as a fraction. 2 wholes, that's what you say. Take a look at 3. So the number 3 can be written as a fraction. 3 wholes is how you say it. So boys and girls, this is one of the new skills you'll learn. You need to know how to write or express a whole number as a fraction, and this is how you do it. This means 1 whole, 2 wholes, 3 wholes. The numerator tells you the number of parts you have. The denominator tells you the number of parts a whole is divided into. Well, guess what? These pies are wholes. So what you say is the numerator tells you how many wholes you have, and then the word whole. So 1 whole, 2 wholes, 3 wholes. So let's revisit this question. I'm wondering if you can try it. 1 whole can be divided into many equal parts. Boys and girls, what are all the different ways you can write 1 whole as a fraction? Can you try 3 different ways? You can use models, you can use number lines, you can use words. Give it a try.